our spoiler review, and this is where I could really, really, really dive into it here. So we talked about how characters are changed, and that alters the plot. There's a few things I want to hit home first. I want to elaborate more on the good, right? So we're going to start out here with they got Batman right. The discrepancy between Bruce Wayne being the billionaire playboy and Batman being this dark, brooding vigilante, knocked out of the park. 10 out of 10 home run. I mean, we'll get into specifics now of how in episode one, Treacherous Waters, right? We'll be discussing that more a little more further. We really get to see how Batman at the start of the episode, right, is this detective that only cares about the mission. He even shuts people out so much as Batman that he doesn't even call Alfred Alfred. He calls Alfred Pennyworth. He doesn't think of Alfred as a lifelong friend. Which I felt strongly that I disliked earlier, but at the end of the season, his character arc kind of comes to a close to where he actually calls him Alfred. So I understand what they were going with there. So you know what? Fine. I'll give that one a pass. I found it a little weird, like this dude raised you and you're going to be super cold to him, but whatever. I get it. He only cares about this mission, and similar to the show, Matt Reeves' The Batman movie, which is my favorite Batman live action movie now, did the same thing. So I can't have too much criticism on it. You know what? I understand what they were going for. You get a pass for that. And I really like Alfred in the show too. But he's super cold when he's Batman, and even when he's just alone out of the costume with Alfred, he has the Batman voice. He is Batman. He's not Bruce Wayne. But the second he steps into the public light, you could see he puts on this fake, and he hates it. You could tell he hates it. He puts on this fake smile, and he's like, "I'm the playboy. Hey, ladies, let's go grab a Harvey. We don't have a drink, right?" He gets on this. He gets into public. He gets on this boat on this cruise with a bunch of people, and he's acting like this billionaire jackass playboy, right? But it's all a disguise so he can continue to be the Batman behind closed doors. They nailed it. They nailed it so perfectly. They did such a good job with it. And I have to credit them on that. They got Batman right. So if they got Batman right, why is this show not top tier? What happened? Well, just because you get Batman right doesn't mean you get Batman's world right. And they failed. They did not get the classic characters of Batman right, and I am very disappointed in it. I understand this was supposed to be something different. I understand they were going for an Elseworlds take. That doesn't change the fact that they drastically changed a lot of classic characters, in my opinion. Now, I'm not a big... they race swapped Jim Gordon in the Batman movie, and it's still my favorite movie. As long as you can play the part correctly, I don't care. All right? However, they change Jim Gordon and Barbara Gordon so much here that they're not just race swapped, but Barbara Gordon's like 25, and she's a DA, and Jim Gordon, who's the police commissioner, is now the father of like an adult Barbara Gordon, who is essentially the main character of the show. And the show is called Batman Capes Crusader, not Barbara Gordon and Batman. And so when you make this giant change to Barbara Gordon, who her role now is essentially to be Jim Gordon, Batman interacts with her more than he does with actual Jim Gordon. And we don't get that classic alliance between Jim Gordon and Batman because Barbara Gordon is now Jim Gordon. I didn't like this switch. I'm not saying you can't make Barbara Gordon this badass. For hell, she becomes Batgirl at a certain point. She's going to be a badass. But they did it in a way to where they just made her Commissioner Gordon. And they made her like the main character of the show. And I didn't want to see Batman interact with future Batgirl the same way he interacts with Jim. Or he's supposed to interact with Jim. They really almost kind of cut Jim Gordon's character out to knees to why is he here? I don't understand why he's needed. His daughter does everything he would do. He's just here because, look, it's Jim Gordon, guys. He doesn't have a real character arc. Sure, he deals with and we'll talk about this, he deals with the corruption of the police force, but so does Barbara. And she does it better than him. So what's the point if you're going to make Barbara Jim. I understand the switch they wanted to make. If they wanted to make Barbara Gordon have more of an adult role and more of a DA office role, I get that. But you can make her character not like Jim Gordon. Fine. You want to make that giant switch and make Barbara the DA and she's her own involved in crime. Great. You can do that. But maybe make it so that she's not essentially another Commissioner Gordon. Maybe make it so that her worldviews are different and she likes the Batman, right? Or that she sees something different in the Batman and she convinces Jim to like him. But they don't do any of that. It's a really strange thing here to where you alter the classicness of Barbara Gordon to where I can't see her becoming Batgirl. She just looks like this badass right away. Maybe make it so that she's not a badass. She sees the badass Batman and wants to become a badass. Make Jim an overprotective father over her and not wanting her to get involved in all this stuff. Him seeing the Batman and saying, you know what, maybe this guy's not so bad. Have Jim and Batman have their usual interactions, and there you go. Now Barbara is on the outskirts of this, but she slowly is brought in because she's captivated by how amazing the Batman is and she wants to be more like him. And her father doesn't want her to become like this, right? That's stuff you can do. But instead, they just interject badass Barbara here who just solves everybody's problems, and her and Batman are all buddy-buddy, and he gets in touch with her before he even gets in touch with Jim. I wanted a classic story of Jim and Batman where Jim sees that this guy who the rest of the police force doesn't like and thinks he's a bad vigilante who should be put in jail. And Jim sees, you know what, maybe he's calling out the corruption here. And he and Batman have this relationship where you're the only good cop, Jim, right? I wanted to see more of that, more of them talking, more of them building that relationship. We got none of it. We got none of it. We get one scene of it in episode 4 where Jim is going to put Batman under arrest and he sees he's holding a bunch of kids. And that's when he goes, oh, okay. Maybe this guy's not so bad. But that's it. That's it. There's no buildup to it. It's a very frustrating thing when you alter characters like that. And Jim's really not even acting like Jim. Sure, he's that cop that's not corrupt. He's not bent. But even so, he's controlled by the mayor. All of his decisions are controlled by the mayor, and he can't make certain decisions because the mayor just tells him what to do. There's no Jim is under the mayor's thumb, but he goes out the back door and talks to Batman on the roof. There's none of that. There's none of those classic Batman things. At least not yet. But I wanted to see that. I wanted season 1 to be that. I didn't want it to be the Barbara Gordon show, where Barbara Gordon is the main center focus of everything. And it's frustrating in that end. They also change other characters. The Penguin. Again, listen, is it the biggest deal in the world that the Penguin was gender swapped? No. She's a girl now, great. But why? It was just to throw a shock ball in there to say, look, we did something different. The Penguin's a girl now. She's Oswalda. In a sense, it worked because she was brutal to her real life kids because once she figured out that she got it wrong, but she thought one of her kids was selling her out to another mob boss. So she puts him in a suitcase and throws him in the ocean. That was cool. I liked it. Yeah. I guess that was for the better because you were able to add an element of she's a horrible person and a horrible mother who will kill her own children. I like that. So if there's any change I like, it's that. But did we have to change a classic character to do that? Did we have to? Again, out of all of them, that's the least on my list of the ones I didn't like. That was probably the best one that they did do, but they do it with everybody. They did it with Harley Quinn, who actually I talked about maybe being changed for the better. The last time I went through the trailer, I said maybe this was the change for the better. And you know what? I still kind of stick to that. I do stick to that. They made her more menacing, and she uses her psychology background as a weapon. My problem is she only does it with a specific type of these evil billionaires. These guys are the evil ones, and it's okay to psychologically torture them, but the other criminals in the show are treated as heroes in a sense. And it just doesn't sit well with me. If you're going to portray one person as a villain. We want to, or this demographic as villains. We want to portray the villains as villains, and I'm going to get into that now as we go over Two-Face. Two-Face is made to be this dickhead at the start of the show, and I hate it. He's more sympathetic, and he turns out to be a better guy after he becomes Two-Face, which is dumb. It is a dumb. He literally dies by protecting Barbara Gordon and taking a bullet for her. And it would be one thing if he was redeeming himself, because he was a good man who fell from grace after he becomes Two-Face and fights the demons, but he was never the good guy. I don't understand the discrepancy between the two faces. He's a dick at the start of the show, he's a dick throughout the show, and then he becomes a good dude after he becomes Two-Face. It makes no sense. And instead of getting Batman versus Two-Face, essentially, which we do get in episode 9 a bit, the finale is Batman and Two-Face against the corrupt cops of Gotham. Which, you know what? I don't hate, but it wasn't earned. I like the direction of that. Again, I wanted to like the plot, but the decision to make Harvey a dick before he becomes Two-Face, it's not earned by the time we get there. I can't get behind it because I never got behind Harvey. Same thing with Harley Quinn. They try to make her this sympathetic character in episode 5 when I can't get behind her as this sympathetic character because she's torturing people. She's not a sympathetic character. I don't care. These guys are evil and money. Great. She's torturing them. Illegally. In a place where she calls her playpen. Well, she's physically and psychologically torturing these people, making them dress up a certain way and just write till their fingers can't hurt anymore and stuff like that. It's just, I can't support. How are you going to tell me this was the good guy just trying to do the right thing? She tortured people and kidnapped them. And they didn't physically break the law. It's not like she's torturing criminals. She's torturing, in her eyes, perceived criminals. That they're wealthy, so they're bad because they're cancers on society. Sure, maybe they did some bad things with money, and she feels that the justice system lets them get away with it, so she incorporates her own brand of justice, like Batman. The difference is Batman goes after actual criminals, and she's going after perceived criminals, and the audience is supposed to side with her because. And another thing is she's an open lesbian, along with the cop, Detective Montoya, which, you know what? Fine. If this was a modern times period piece, sure. Yeah, that should be done in comics, like Poison Ivy and the original Harley Quinn. But guess what? This is supposed to be set in the 40s. And they're girls openly kissing in public. That didn't happen in the 40s. If we're going to put something in the 40s, make it stick with the 40s. Otherwise, just put this in modern times, and that criticism goes away. But it's an Elseworlds, and it's fictional, so who's to say in this universe that in the 40s there wasn't more? Okay, fine, great. But it pulls me out of it, because when you say something set in the 40s, I'm assuming it's set in a time period of the 40s. And that impacts the show for me, because we're pushing this stuff into that stuff, into the superhero stuff. And again, Harley Quinn probably was changed for the, I would almost argue, the better, because we made her more menacing. However, it's just too far from the classic Harley that I'm just not a fan. I wasn't a fan of changing her so drastically. It didn't sit well with me. The changes they made just didn't sit well with me. The only exception I can kind of think of was Clayface. They did him in episode 2 very well. He was this tortured soul who looked ugly. The guy comes up, gives him a serum, and he decides to play. Even that, no, I changed my mind. I didn't even like that. I liked it. I thought the episode was cool. I thought the detective stuff around it was cool. But he just decides to play the part of villain. Again, all very just sudden. Like, why? I just want to play the part of villain now because my crush rejected me. Great. I like the look of Two-Face. I like the murder mystery surrounding it. It was cool. But again, his motivation for becoming Two-Face, Clayface, motivation for becoming Clayface is just, the lines are blurred. It was just weird. The best episodes to me were episode 3 with Catwoman. Everything done there was perfect, and then episode 8, which is the the nocturnal girl, right? The evil vampire girl. And here's what I liked and didn't like about that. Going back to episode 3 real quick though, everything done with Catwoman was perfect. Her characterization, her being inspired by Batman, her um, her chemistry with Bruce Wayne, even Bruce Wayne going to therapy with Harleen Quinzel, exploring his origin more. I loved episode 3. That was great. That was all that was fantastic. Getting into episode 8 with that was also another one of my favorite ones because we got to see this tortured soul who doesn't want to kill people, but her powers are she needs to drain them for energy. Um, we also got to see Batman. We got to see his emotional side dealing with her, and we also got to see these kids who go by the names of Dickie, Carrie, and Stephanie. I didn't like this decision. I understand it. Cool Easter egg. Look, it's all the little Robins at the same orphanage. Does that mean we're not doing a Robin now? Because that would really upset me. Or are we just going to do Tim Drake and make him the Robin? Because obviously all these other kids are, unless they're all just going to become Robin now. I don't know. And Batman's somehow going to meet all of them again in the future. Kind of ruin their origin stories. We know we're not getting a Dick Grayson origin story, which sucks. So I wasn't a fan of that, but I was a fan of the episode as a whole. And that's what I got to say about the series, man. It does certain things right. It does the Batman character right. The music is done well. I love the detective noir stuff that they inserted in there. I understand where they were trying to go with the plot, but because of the changes to the characters, it affected how I felt about the plot. And give this show, if you haven't watched the show, obviously I spoiled essentially almost everything for you. I'm going to get to the final my final thoughts on the show with the final scene here in a second. But if you watch this, don't take what I say as gospel. Go watch the show yourself. But in case you want to not be spoiled on this last thing, even though you've been spoiled on everything else, you can go. But essentially, at the end of the show, right, obviously, Harvey Dent in the final episode, takes the bullet for Barbara Gordon, Batman. There's this scene I really love where Flask, that corrupt cop, loses his gun. Batman's holding that gun, and it looks like, as the camera pans away, that Batman is going to shoot him, and you hear 4 bullets pop, 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 right? And then you turn to see Batman shot around the guy, but he never shot the guy, and he throws the gun in anger in the ocean. Love that scene. Love it. I love it. A lot of people don't like to see Batman holding a gun, but I understood what that scene was supposed to do. Batman doesn't kill. That scene was Batman taking that part of him that wants to kill and killing it. That was perfect. That was great. Another scene I loved is at the very end, we see that there are these people strapped to chairs inside a log cabin in the woods, and they're all have big smiles on their face, and there's one guy and he's just laughing maniacally, uncontrollably, and then it cuts to a character and you don't get to see the mouth, but you see the eyes and the parts of the green hair, and he goes, perfect. And that is, of course, the Joker perfecting his Joker formula, which we will see in season 2. And you know what? I'm excited for it, but I just hope it's done well. As long as they do it well. I think it's not too late to course correct with certain things. But this is this universe, and whether I like it or not, this is how they're running the show. I wish we got to see classic Batman interactions between Jim Gordon, and Barbara. I wish we got to see maybe a little bit of hints for a future Robin, a classic future Robin. I wish we got a little more classic interactions of some of the villains. We get very distinct takes on them, and they're just not classic in the way that I'd like them to be. Maybe in season 2 we can fix that a little bit. But all in all, it's a good detective show. They understand the character of Batman, but in my opinion at least, they fail on the world building of Batman. So if you haven't seen the show, go check it out. It's on Amazon Prime. It's only 10 episodes, 24 minutes piece. But that's how I feel about Batman Caped Crusader. Thank you guys for joining me for this episode today. Really appreciate it. And, well, I will see you all in the next one.